Just when you think Hannibal couldn't get more gross, disgusting, or amazing, that episode happens. Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is ready for Hannibal Season 3, Episode 7, Digestivo, I think is pronounced. And either way, holy shit, like, this episode, I've been loving this season, but after this episode, this has to be the best season of Hannibal, seriously. I can't think of something that has gone better than this season has. And I'm gonna say right now, guys, this was my favorite episode, not just of the season, but Hannibal, period. I absolutely loved this episode. This is why I watch Hannibal. This is why I love the show, for these amazing stories. And in many ways, this felt like a series finale, because in many ways it is. It ended the um main plot of the show and really got into the stuff that we all know, because they're doing the Red Dragon next week, and this kind of felt like the ending if there wasn't one. Honestly, because of them doing that, I'm kind of fine that the show got canceled, because I feel like now that they're going into Red Dragon, that's really all they need to tell. And then Silence of the Lambs, obviously Will Graham's not involved in, so I really did love this episode. I thought it was amazing. It was so intense, so much intense moments in this episode. There's so much to talk about, so much to get into, and let's just get into it, because it was just so fucking amazing. I loved every minute of it. So we start right after Hannibal gave Will that scalping, because we kind of had some questions about, well, how this all happened. We basically see, as he's giving him the scalping, these inspectors come in and stop him, and Jack says he doesn't imagine they're there to make an arrest. Now, you pretty much figure that they're working for Mason. That's why they're there, because obviously it didn't work with Posse, and he needed more inspectors. We knew he said he was getting more, and those are probably the ones he got. So Commander Bennett says he imagined correctly. The inspectors tie Hannibal up, and Bennett says to take Hannibal and Will as well, as Mason will pay them double for both. And he tells Jack there is no price for him, and Jack asks if Hannibal gets away, and that's how the story goes. And he says Hannibal's last in the wind, but he has left one last victim. And he tells the inspectors to open him the way that he opened Will, open him all the way, and basically they start drilling into Jack's head. I honestly thought they were going to kill off Jack in this scene. Luckily, they didn't. Someone does shoot the inspectors from a window, and we see that it's Chayo, who... Chayo, I think, is a very interesting character, because, of course, Will was this close to killing Hannibal, and then she had to shoot Will, and that's how the whole scalping happened. So she goes up to Jack, and he tells her raw on floor. He asks her to help untie him and pull the needle out of his neck. She asks where they took them. He asks if she did this, and she says, of course. He tells her he appreciates it. She says he's sitting at Hannibal's table and realizes that he knows him and knows Will, and he says he knows them, but they are identically different, which I like that he pointed that out, because you know, people always compare them, and they are very different. And Will brings up a great point in this episode about how different him and Hannibal are, which I love. And she asks again where they took them, and he said they're most likely taken to the U.S. or Maryland. And he says he could even tell her the address once she pulls the needle out of his neck, because, you know, that's what he cares about. He cares about getting the hell out of there. And he says his work then consists of getting out of Florence, since he's supposed to be dead, and basically has to fake his death to make it seem like he is dead. So that is his mission. So he says that it puts him in no position to stop whatever she intends on starting. She unties him and pulls the needle out, and she asks again where he says Muskrat Farm, and then he tells her that they're at Muskrat Farm, of course, the Verger estate in northern Maryland. And she takes a gun and then puts it down, and then she gets a sniper out and goes to find them. And Margot then gets a call from, and I thought that was a fantastic way to start the episode. I really did love that, really got us into it, and I mean, they really, you know, revealed everything that was going on, why they went to Muskrat Farm, and I definitely really love that. So Margot gets a call from an unknown number, and she says something in French, and Alana then wakes up beside her. She says that Mason has what he wants, and she thinks it's time Alana gets what she wants. And she says Mason has Hannibal and Will too, and she says her brother is a sadist, and she says he will torture them. And I mean, I think Alana was really starting to realize that Mason doesn't really give a shit about Margot. He just wanted, you know, sex from her. He abused her. He didn't really care much about her. And Alana's really starting to realize that. And I think that definitely is very interesting. So she says it gives them time. Mason tells Cordell he got half of the Muskrat Farm, and he says it smells like salvation. Basically, they arrive in Muskrat Farm, and a truck opens up. Will and Hannibal are in it, and of course, we get to right where the last episode left off. Welcome to Muskrat Farm. They're hanging upside down in the back of the truck, and what we get in Muskrat Farm is some of the most graphic and amazing stuff this show has ever given us, honestly. Whoever plays Mason, give this guy an Emmy. Seriously, give him an Emmy. He is amazing in the show. So menacing, so creepy, and it's just perfect casting, really. That's one of the things this show has, just perfect casting. So they're hanging upside down in the back of the truck. Hannibal says his people might have assassinated him in Florence. He says there's no, and I love how Mason's like, oh, there's no fun in that. He's just like so casual about it. That's something I love about Mason, is how casual he is about cannibalism and things like that. He doesn't really give a shit. So he says he took his father's knife ever ready to slip it into pigs' backs to check the depth of the fat. And Cordell then takes them, and Mason takes a slice into Hannibal, tastes the blood. He says he's a little lean and they need to fatten him up, and he says it's more trouble to hold a semi-wild pig against its will than it is to kidnap a man. And Cordell says pigs are harder to get hold of, and big ones are stronger than a man, which, yeah, that is true, what Cordell is saying, which I thought that was pretty interesting, definitely. And the way that Mason compares pigs to humans, I think is definitely very interesting, the way that he does that. So basically, he says that we see after this, as I said, they're hanging upside down, and basically Cordell says pigs are harder to get hold of, and Mason says he has a task to consider if Hannibal wants to contain the integrity of his abdomen. He tells Will basically that tusked beasts instinctively disembowel, and he says at swine fairs he has seen more exotic pigs than all over the world. He tells Hannibal he's the best he's ever seen, and tells him they're going to have some good, funny times, and basically he says to Alana that it's sad about Jack Crawford. Of course, Jack wants everyone to think he's dead, but Alana knows he's not. Like, she even says that she knows Jack is alive, and that I thought was really interesting. So she says he saw the snatch, and he says he trusts Alana didn't betray doctor-patient confidentiality, and she says now if you remember, Alana is his psychologist, so that's really what he's talking about there. And Margot says the FBI is going to catch the first wheel on the kidnapping. He says the moment Jack stepped in Italy, he registered a complaint for the authority in the district attorney's office that he had been harassing him. So basically, he said he called him late at night with incoherent threats, and Alana says he can't prove he didn't, and he says it muddles the water, and Margot says he can't head off a warrant, and he says there will be no warrant. Alana says she appreciates killing Hannibal, but she's not without benefit from that. He says he can't murder her if he's dead, because obviously if Hannibal realizes that Alana's alive, he's probably going to go after her and try to kill her. But if he's dead, then, Alana gets something out of that, and Mason gets something out of that. And she says he's not yet. She says if he plays with his food, he gives it the opportunity to bite back. And I thought that was definitely very interesting. Kind of like how far can he push Hannibal? So he says he's not playing, but says he's always playing. And Hannibal puts on a suit. Hannibal and Will are then dressed basically for dinner. And Cordell and Mason's men carry him and strap him into a chair. And we get some of the best dialogue we have ever gotten in the show. This whole scene at the dinner table, it's so intense. You don't know what's going to happen. And I just love that. And Mason says he snatched Will right out of his mouth. He says he must have been famished. Cordell brings him food. Cordell, I have to say, so creepy. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Cordell, but we saw so much from this episode. He was so creepy and so calm and menacing, and I really loved it, I have to say. He was fantastic. Hannibal says there's an inexplicable parallel between Mason and Jezebel, who, of course, was that Bible student that had her face eaten off by dogs along with the rest of her, which I actually forgot about Jezebel, and I like they brought her up. And he says, basically, a transplant surgery is extremely skillful, which is why Cordell will be performing the face-off. And he says they remind him of a German cannibal who advertised for a friend and then ate him. So we quickly realize that the reason he's holding Will, is because he wants his face. He wants his... And I thought that was definitely very interesting. And, basically, Will realizes that he's going to eat him with his face, and he says he's had a taste for it ever since he bit off his own nose. And if you recall, they basically forced him to eat himself, so this is kind of his revenge. And Hannibal says he must be terribly proud that he could bring this off, and he says it's dangerous to get accepted what he wants. He asks what he will do after he's eaten him, and Will says he could wreck some foster homes and torment children. And Mason says he will drink martinis with tears, and Hannibal asks where would that come from. And Mason says it's foolish to dilute such time with fears about the future. Cordell comes out. Mason tells him to get Will some moisturizer. Hannibal asks what part of him he will eat first, and Cordell says his hands will be first, and Hannibal says He's thought of everything, and there's not one point in this episode where Hannibal's threatened, and that's because Hannibal's just as menacing as Mason. I mean, that's something I really do love here, is that these two guys are pretty much the same way. It's just one of them is much more crazy than, because Hannibal really, he's not crazy. He's not. He knows exactly what he's doing. Mason has just gone crazy, really, and that's partially Will and Hannibal's fault. But Hannibal has never really been crazy. He's not crazy. He's a psychopath and he's a serial killer, but he understands what he's doing. He's not confused by what he's doing, and that's something I think is really good about Hannibal, how he's not at any point scared, but yet the person that he's up against is basically the same kind of person as him, just kind of different. I thought that was definitely very interesting. So basically, Cordell says he will keep Milan. He says Cordell will keep Milan for a long time, and Will then bites part of Cordell's face off. I did not see this coming at all. He literally takes a bite into his cheek, and Mason says Will won't be invited to the party. They will feed him to the pigs as soon as Cordell has removed his face, and he says he tries to do things in a more civilized fashion. He just tries to remove his, and it's actually pretty funny what Mason is saying. It's very menacing, but it's funny as well, and I really do like that. So Cordell stitches up his face, and Hannibal's chained up hanging, and Cordell brands him, and basically says Mason would prefer to just brand his face. He says he fought bravely, and with his own funds against the Humane Slaughter Act, he managed to keep it legal. And he says Mason has done beautiful things with these creatures, truly visionary, and you see why he works with Mason. I mean, he pretty much is just as crazy as him, pretty much has the same kind of thought process as him, which I thought was definitely very interesting. And he asks what they'll do, basically, and he says they will boil it and slice it thin, marinate it in oil, garlic, parsley, and vinegar, simple and clean. He says the drill is in a few hours, and basically the drill is that in a few hours he's going to come down and will remove everything that Hannibal's got below the elbows and knees, and he will keep going with IVs and tourniquets until the very last body part is eaten, which I thought that was just so menacing and so creepy as well. And he says some things are saved best for last. He tells him once he's gone, he will be prepared. He will prepare his groin and ribs aged. He says every day will feed Mason some new part of him. He says some of Hannibal. He says not to worry. He will always be cooked to perfection. And that I thought was definitely a very menacing scene. You really see what his plan is. But again, Hannibal's not at all scared because this is what he does. He knows how this works. So Mason says he will feed the eels some of Hannibal, and he asks how long Margot and Alana have been a thing, which I forgot to talk about this, that Margot and Alana, I mean, it just randomly kind of came out of nowhere. The reason they did this, in case you guys don't know, Alana was originally a man in the original Hannibal books and movies. You know, Dr. Bloom was originally a man. They made Alana into a woman for this show, so they basically wanted to keep the same story. So what they did was they had the same story, because in the original story, Margot does fall in love with Dr. Bloom, and they start a whole thing. But because Alana was a woman, I think that's very interesting, the way that they still kept that story. I definitely really like that. And that's something I like that Hannibal writers always do. They always try to do the story just a little bit slightly different than what we know, but keep the same story that we do all know, which I think is great that they did that. So basically, she says not long. He says Cordell says it was longer than that. He asks if Alana wants children. He says if he's sure she's had a chance to check on that by now. He asks how's the uterus and asks if it's still intact. And she says not necessarily, and he says she's got a big surprise coming her way. He's already found them a surrogate, which I thought was really interesting. She asks where she is, and he says she's resting at the moment. She asks if he can see her, and I'm just like, this is going to be too good to be true. Knowing Mason, it's just, you know it's going to be too good to be true. He says first feels she should prepare herself, as this will be a very emotional experience for her. He has to prepare for appropriate timing, but Margot wants to meet this surrogate like pronto. That's what she wants. She just wants this child. She wants to know there's a surrogate out there that's going to have her child, and that's really what she wants. Of course, Mason's concerned that he has an heir and a verger baby. That's what he wants, but that's not what Margot's interested in. She just wants to have a kid and wants to know that there is a surrogate out there and that Mason actually did something for her. And we'll get to that. So Alana then goes to Will. He asks what she's doing there. She says she's Mason's psychiatrist, and it's a very interesting scene because the first time that Alana and Will have had any type of relations at all since Alana and Will were both mutilated by Hannibal. And it's a very interesting scene. He asks if this is part of his therapy or hers, and she says they're all working through some issues, which is true. They're all going through a lot of things, and I do agree with what she's saying. She says she's putting an emphasis on self-preservation. She tells him Jack's alive. He asks if she helped Mason find them. She says she helped Mason find Hannibal, and she missed they should have just followed him. She says she was trying to get to Hannibal before him. She knew he couldn't stop himself, and he asked what she thinks would have happened. And she says she thought Jack and the FBI would have come to the rescue, but the finer details of what she thought would have happened have evolved, and there's really nothing she can do about that. And he tells her she needs to evolve. She has to spill blood either by her own hand or someone else's. She basically tells him, look, you gotta kill Hannibal because I've tried to do it and I can't do it. So Margot then finds Hannibal chained up, and he thanks her for coming. He says it hasn't been that long since he's treated her. If you remember, Margot started out in this show, you know, the whole way we started this Verger storyline is Margot was, of course, Hannibal's patient who was terrified of her brother, and that's really how this whole thing started. I like they really came back to that in this episode, and I mean, it was very important. I really did love that. I mean, this is probably the most focus the Vergers have ever had, and I really do love that. So she asks if they're in therapy. He says to tell him. She says Mason promised to give something back to her, something that he stole. There was a surrogate all along. She says it's hers, and he says he will always deny her. She knows that he'll have to kill him, and she asks him if he can do it for her, and I thought that was definitely very interesting when she said that. And she says she can never trust him, and she says she can trust, and basically he says that she can trust that he will never do it. If you remember in the therapy, he told her there's going to be an opportunity when you're going to get to kill him, and now is that opportunity. And basically he said it's going to be more therapeutic for her to kill him herself, and he recommended that in session he told her to wait until she could get away with it. And he says he's the only other suspect she's got. And I thought this was a really well done plan, especially for Hannibal, who's so menacing. It was actually very sweet what he was doing. I really like this. And he says he's the only other suspect she's got, and that she can do it when it suits her. He will then write a letter glowing about how much he enjoyed killing himself, and basically he won't even pin it on Margot. He'll just make it seem like he did it, and I think that's really smart that Hannibal did that. So Alana then decides to we then see someone like shoot the chain that Hannibal's in. It's Alana, and he warns her that he has a pocket knife, and she says she was trying to save Will from him, but now he's the only one who can save him. Because, of course, she went there to protect Will, but now she knows that, you know what, Hannibal's really the only one. And she has to promise her that he will, and he does. He says he's always kept his promises. He always keeps his promises, and she asks if he's going to kill Mason. And he says, like always, and of course he's not going to tell her that Margot is really going to be the one to do it. And he tells her to snatch some of his hair from his hairline to get some skin and put it in Mason's hand. And when he's dead, she asks if she could have ever understood him. And I thought that was really smart what he did, because if they see the hair, then they'll think, okay, he killed Mason. And he says no, she snatches the hair, then she cuts the ropes and basically lets him do the rest. So he frees himself, and that was awesome when that happened. So Mason says to Will that Cordell told him if he waited long enough, he could die and he could get his face for himself. But he made sure it was Will's face he wanted. He was looking at his when he watched him cut his off, and it's really disturbing stuff. But again, it's kind of like Mason's way of revenge because of the fact that Will and Hannibal just watched him eat his face off, and they really never did anything about it. I mean, literally, if you remember, he literally, like, bit his nose off. I mean, it's really crazy stuff, guys. And Cordell tells him he's going under. When he wakes up, his face will be more comfortable. He asks if he's accepted Jesus, and he says he does. He's free, and Cordell then makes this really crude slice into Will, and he tells him he's going to cut off his face without anesthesia. And that right there is just like, okay, there's no way that this is actually going to work out, because you knew that Will wasn't going to die. I mean, Will is the main character of the show. If Will was gone, the show would be over. It's that simple. So Margot and Alana go to find the surrogate, and we realize that there is no surrogate. It's a dead pig. Yes, that's how much Mason screwed them over. And I knew that it wasn't legit. Like, when Mason said, okay, I found you a surrogate, I'm like, nope, he screwed them over. And yeah, he did. It's a dead pig. He put his semen sample into it. However, the baby is possibly still alive. You know, Alana's saying there's no heartbeat. But Margot's not convinced. She wants to make sure this baby's alive, and she tells her to take it out. Cordell then makes some marks on where to cut into Will's face. He says to be sure to let him know if this hurts. He starts carving into his face. we see him, it looks like he takes his face off and puts it onto Mason, and basically Margot finds the baby is dead, and then Mason puts on his new, and basically, yeah, the baby died, and Mason's plan failed epically, so it failed, but also he executed. I don't really know what he was trying to do, but it didn't work out, so Mason then puts on his new face, it comes off, he screams, you can tell that something did not work out because it's not Will's face, and Will's not even there. He's screaming for Cordell, he has no idea what's going on, and he doesn't know why any of this happened, and basically his face is blurrier than ever. Hannibal, though, was the one that saved Will, and basically he takes Will, puts him near this tree, Chayo's shooting near them with a sniper, Mason screams for Cordell, it's crazy, it really is crazy what's going on. But then Alana greets him, and this was so badass, honestly. Something I love about this is that two characters, Alana and Margot, they've had stuff to do in this show, but never to the extent of what they had to do in this episode. And that's something I think is awesome. I don't think Alana's ever killed someone, and I don't think, obviously, we haven't seen Margot do that either, and it really makes me hope that Margot sticks around in the show, even after this storyline concludes, because I think she is just so badass, and I really do love her character. So Alana greets him, she tells him Cordell's dead, they're all dead, and it's such this huge moment for Mason. I mean, he realizes that he is losing, and Margot goes up to him and says she found his surrogate, and she says he promised to give her a virgin baby, and she says she's taking what she promised, and she's taking everything she needed for him. And she says there'll be an heir, a virgin baby that is mostly his, and Alana asks if he knows what happens when they touch his prostate gland with a cattle prod. She says Hannibal knows, he helped them milk him, and Margot then throws him in with those eels, basically. She, like, attacks him, she, like, falls into the water, and, luckily she gets out. Alana then keeps him under, and it's pretty crazy. Alana's just holding him under. Mason struggles until an eel eventually crawls into his mouth, and obviously he asphyxiates, and he dies, and wow, so Mason's dead, and honestly, I understand why. He served his purpose on the show. He did what he had to do. He tried to get revenge on Hannibal and Will. Didn't work out. That was the only reason why he was on this show, and now that that's over, basically that storyline is concluded, and I think that's awesome. So, that's something I thought was great. Going from Mason being probably have the biggest triumph in the show to Mason being the one that lost the most, and I mean, honestly, that was pretty insane. I definitely really love that story, and I really hope that Margot does stick around. I'm pretty sure she will. I definitely see Alana and Margot, this whole storyline, because if Alana's back, definitely Margot's going to be back, obviously. I definitely could see that happening. But we'll have to see, because there definitely is a lot to talk about after this episode. So, Chayo and Hannibal then return, and he asks her if she's ready to go home, and he asks if she can. She says more than he can. She says some bees shouldn't be caged, and he says her obsessive and successful hunt was driven by her or him, and it wasn't. She said it wasn't driven by her or him. It wasn't her idea. It was Mishka's idea. And when she said Mishka, this is a very interesting moment, because Hannibal decides to tell her something right here that I really love this, I have to say. I thought this was a very good twist that I didn't see coming at all, and I definitely really love that. Because he tells her straight out that he was not the one that killed her, he had nothing to do with her death, and he did not kill Mishka. So all this time, he didn't kill her, and I thought that was awesome that we found that out. You know, we realized that Hannibal's not, he's insane, but he does care about people, and you do see that. That's something I really do like about Hannibal. Yeah, he's a serial killer. Yeah, he's this creepy guy, but he does care about these people, and you really do see that. That's something I think we saw very well in this episode. He really is an anti-hero, and that's something I think is awesome. I mean, for example, the thing he did with Margot, him not killing his sister, he has, you know, limits, definitely. He is a guy that does have some limits, and I think that definitely is very good. Mason, however, never had limitations, and that's why he died, and that's why Hannibal has him, because he does have limitations, and Mason doesn't. So he tells her she would be the most stable element in the periodic table between atom and sulfur, and just like Hannibal said, we then see this teacup broken. If you remember, Will and him had this conversation about when the teacup breaks, and it pretty much is symbolizing how their relationship is now broken. So Will is asleep, he's really happy, he's back in a bed, and it's a really great moment for Will, because all season, I mean, he's been through shit, and finally he's at peace, he's happy, he's sleeping, and he's saying goodbye to Hannibal. They talk about the broken teacup. He says it will never gather itself back together again, And Hannibal says his memory palace is building. It's now full of things. He says it's when it comes to the two of them, there can be no decisive victory. You can tell that Hannibal's trying to bomb Will, but Will just wants nothing to do with him at this point. He's just like, okay, whatever, Hannibal, just get the hell out. I don't want to talk to you, which is understandable. And Will tells him that he's gone, and basically, but he's, basically, this that was definitely very interesting. And basically, he tells Will straight out, look, I'm going to miss my dogs, but I'm not going to miss you. And he tells him he's not going to find him. He's not going to look for him. He doesn't want to know where he is or what he does. He doesn't even want to think about him anymore. He just wants to move on with his life. He's tired of having Hannibal in it. He's tired of the constant drama. And, Hannibal's put him through so much that he's just done. He really just wants to move on. And he says he delights, he tolerates, he doesn't have his appetite. He says one last goodbye to him. Police cars then pull up, and I love the way this episode ends. Jack then gets out. Will tells him he's gone, but he's not. He surrenders. Hannibal says he caught up, but Jack says he didn't. He wants to know where they can find him. He looks at Will one last time. Jack is smiling in triumph, kind of like how, he finally caught Hannibal. He tells the FBI to put him in his car. They take him away. Chayo sees them leave, goes into the woods, and that's how the episode ends. So, moving forward, now we're going to get into the Red Dragon storyline. In order for the show to do that, there's going to be quite a bit of a time jump when the show returns, and I think that's awesome that the show is doing that. It's going in a very ballsy direction. That's something I think is awesome that the show does, but what an incredible episode this was. There definitely are some questions I have. First of all, Bedelia was not in this entire episode. Where's Bedelia? What she's doing? We have to catch up with that. She's such a huge part of the story. I can't help but think she's going to come back. That's something I definitely do want to know, is what's going on with Bedelia. Obviously, Hannibal and Will's relationship is horrible right now. He wants nothing to do with him. You know that they're going to come back together, because something I thought was really interesting that Hugh Dancy said, who plays Will, he said in an interview that no matter what happens, even if Will want to get away from Hannibal, he can't, because of how connected they are and the bond that they have. You just can't get away from him. And I think it's very interesting what he said. We're definitely going to see that in the coming episodes. And you see in the promo that right away he's going to be paired up with Hannibal again, which I'm definitely looking forward to. If you guys don't know, it's going to take place, the next episode is going to take place 3 years after this episode, which I think is awesome. Which really brings me to the question, what's going on with Alana? It looks like Alana is working in the mental hospital that Hannibal's in, which I think is really interesting. Let's talk about Chayo, because I don't know if we're going to see Chayo again. I feel like she's kind of served her purpose, but are they going to get something for Chayo to do? That's something I think is going to be very interesting. Obviously, the Red Dragon thing, I can't wait to see how that plays out. I'm honestly fine that the show is ending, though, because again, the Red Dragon's really the end of Will Graham's story, and in order for them to tell that full story, they need to tell the Red Dragon part of the story. And I can't wait to see how that whole part plays out. That's going to be awesome. It looks like he's back as working for the FBI, which is awesome. We really haven't seen that yet this season, so I'm looking forward to them going back into that. That's something I think is going to be awesome to watch. But what an incredible episode, really. I love seeing Mason just be a badass, honestly. Mason was awesome in this episode. So sad to see him, not sad to see him go, but I like seeing him. Also, Margot. Is Margot going to be in the time jump? I really hope she is. I really love her character. I love what they're doing with her. I hope they continue to develop her as well as they did in this episode, because she really is this fascinating character, I have to say. She's a great character. I love what she did, and I really love her just as a character overall. She hasn't done much in the show, but stuff like that, yes, she definitely has done a lot of, and just the fact that she was able to kill, she was the one to kill Mason, and no one else had to do it for her except for Alana. I thought that was awesome, and I can't wait to see how that plays out. We're going to meet Will's wife in the next episode, so that's going to be very interesting. How is Will's perspective on life going to be different? I feel like he's going to be a lot more positive now, a lot more happy with himself. Not like 100% happy, but I definitely feel like he's going to be a little bit more positive. I kind of see the beginning of next week's episode going in a much more positive direction, which I think is going to be very interesting. I'm interested in seeing how that all plays out. Hannibal's, no matter what, he's going to be happy. He's in a mental institution. He's going to be fine with that. He's going to be like, okay, I'm in a mental institution. I enjoy it. Like, he's going to enjoy being in that mental institution. Alana looks like she's going to work for him, which I think is definitely very interesting. I really don't know what else the time jump's going to do, guys. I think it definitely is going to be very interesting to see how the show adjusts to that. but I really have loved this first half of the season. This really did feel like a series finale, though. Like, you don't need to continue forward, but the only reason they are is because people want to see that. They know what the fans want. They know they want the Red Dragon part of the story, so they're going to give it to us, and I think that's awesome that they are, but they don't really need to tell that part of the story, even though I really want them to. I can't wait to see how that plays out. The Comic-Con footage was amazing. The cinematography in this episode was just incredible. This episode was like a non-stop thrill ride. I loved it. I thought just everything really was absolutely incredible in this episode. It really was. I loved every minute of it. It was so crazy. You didn't know what was going to happen next, and I think it definitely is very cool. Do I think that Hannibal's going to, like, start to not show as much blood and things like that? Oh, fuck no. Definitely it's going to be just as graphic next episode. But I do feel they're going in a more positive direction, which I think is definitely going to be very interesting. I'm interested in seeing where exactly things are going to go moving forward, and I think that definitely is going to be very cool. So, we have 7 episodes left, and I like the first 7 episodes were the Verger storyline, and the last 7 episodes are the Red Dragon storyline, which I think is really cool. So that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Overall, guys, best episode of the season and the series, I personally think. It was intimidating, it was dramatic, it was sad, it was funny at times even. It had awesome action. It had some really satisfying deaths. It had a great ending as well. It was really everything you want in a Hannibal episode. Probably the best Hannibal episode that I have seen, even though I didn't watch season 1. I heard season 1 wasn't the best anyway. But that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for the season of BoJack Horseman, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.